My dad chose my cousin over me, funded his future, and left me with nothing. Years later, karma made him watch me succeed without him. Hey everyone. Before we kick off today's video, I've got a favor to ask. We've noticed our channel isn't getting as much love lately, and subscribing is one of the easiest ways you can help us out. It's quick, free, and it means we can keep bringing you awesome content. Your support really means a lot, so let's work together to keep this channel growing. Thanks a bunch. Now, let's dive into the video. I never thought I'd be sharing this, but here we are. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and let's just say life hasn't been the easiest, especially when it comes to family stuff. My mom passed away giving birth to me, and I guess that pretty much set the stage for how things went down with my dad. He never got over her death and kind of acted like it was my fault she was gone. I didn't get to know my mom at all, but my relatives have told me so many stories about how over the moon she was to have me. Apparently, she really wanted to be a mom and struggled for years to make it happen. Finding out about her fertility struggles and how thrilled she was to finally have me makes everything even sadder. She finally reached her dream, and then, bam, it was gone just like that. Growing up, our house was like a museum dedicated to my mom. Photos of her everywhere, with my dad keeping everything just as she left it. Her clothes stayed in the closet, and her books still filled the shelves. It was like living with the memory of someone I never got to meet. Sometimes, I'd sneak into their room just to touch her things, hoping to feel some sort of connection with her. Now, my relationship with my dad was a whole different story. Sure, he was physically there, but emotionally, he was in a different universe. He did the basics, made sure I had food, clothes, and got to school, without an ounce of warmth or affection. No hugs, no I love you, not even a pat on the back for doing something right. I always felt like an outsider in my own home. Most days, he would barely look at me, let alone talk to me. And when he did, it was usually to criticize or compare me to my cousin Jake. Jake's dad, my uncle, died in a car accident when Jake was 7, so my dad stepped in to help him out. I can still remember that day vividly. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was doing homework at the kitchen table, and then the phone rang. My dad's face just crumpled as he listened to whoever was on the line. That was the first and only time I saw him cry. After the call, he just sat at the table, staring into space for what felt like forever. Jake started hanging out at our place a lot after that. At first, I was pretty stoked. I thought maybe having another kid around would make things more fun and maybe, just maybe, it would help my dad open up a bit. But nope, Jake being there made things worse between me and my dad. It was always, why can't you be more like Jake? Or Jake would never do that. Jake seemed to be the perfect son my dad always wanted, and I was just kind of there. Jake was sporty, friendly, and outgoing, while I was the shy, bookish type. My dad seemed to love that about Jake. I tried super hard to please my dad, like learning about his interests, getting good grades, and joining every sports team he suggested. No matter what I did, it never seemed to be enough. He'd praise Jake for the smallest things, but I'd get nothing for my achievements. Like when I won the science fair with this cool moving solar system model I made at 12 years old. I was psyched to tell my dad, hoping it would finally make him proud. But he was too busy laughing and chatting with Jake about some football game. When I told him about my win, he just nodded and went right back to Jake. It was like I was invisible. As we got older, it only got worse. People would tease Jake and me since we were in the same grade. I did better in school than Jake did in high school, but my dad would always have some way to downplay it. He'd say stuff like, well, Jake's got more important things to think about than just grades. I remember one time during a parent-teacher meeting, my English teacher was praising this essay I wrote, saying it was one of the best she'd seen from someone my age and that I'd make a great writer. My dad just grunted and asked if writing would get me a big sports scholarship. The teacher looked puzzled and I was so embarrassed, felt my face turn scarlet. Yet, despite everything, a part of me kept wishing for change. I kept thinking maybe, just maybe, things could be alright if. Growing up, I was always trying to find the magic key to win my dad's approval, chasing that dream all through my childhood and teens. When college time rolled around, I thought I had it all figured out, got into a decent university and was ready to kick off my future. I knew money would be tight, but I figured my dad would help out a bit. Boy, was I wrong. I overheard him on the phone with Jake, telling him he'd cover his entire college tuition. My heart sank. When I asked my dad for some help, he said Jake needed it more and he couldn't afford to pay for both of us. Just like that, my college dreams went poof. I tried to make it work, juggling classes with a part-time gig at a local diner, and applied for every scholarship I could find, but it wasn't enough. The stress was unbearable, and by the end of the first semester, I had to drop out because I just couldn't afford it. Meanwhile, Jake was living the dream at a fancy university, fully funded by my dad. Seeing his social media posts of his swanky dorm, spring break trips, and the new laptop my dad bought him was like a dagger to the heart. That was my breaking point. I packed up and left home, cutting off contact with my dad and Jake. It was tough, but I had to get away from that toxic situation. I was done living in the shadow of my late mom and my cousin, who somehow replaced me in my dad's heart. The last few years have been rough. I've taken on all sorts of jobs, waiting tables, working construction, pulling night shifts at gas stations, just to keep a roof over my head and food on the table. It's been tough, especially seeing Jake's updates about his amazing college life and the great job he landed after graduation. But I'm slowly building a life on my own terms. I've landed a decent job, nothing fancy, but it pays the bills. I manage a local bookstore, and I love being surrounded by books all day. Plus, I'm taking night classes at community college, working toward the degree I've always wanted. The journey's tough, but at least I'm doing it on my own. I've also made some awesome friends who accept me for who I am, not who they want me to be. They're like the family I never really had. We have weekly game nights, go camping when we can afford it, and just support each other no matter what. It's not perfect, but it's mine, and that makes all the difference. Just when I thought I'd left the family drama behind, life threw me a curveball. I got a call from an unknown number, and I couldn't believe it. It was my dad. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. He was reaching out for help, and I had all sorts of mixed feelings about it. A week later, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Talking to him brought back a flood of memories, mostly not great ones. He sounded different on the phone, older, more worn out, desperate even. He started with some awkward small talk, like he was trying to pretend the past few years didn't happen, before getting to the real reason for his call. He needed money, and a lot of it. I was speechless. This was the guy who never gave me a cent for college and always picked Jake over me. Now he was asking me for cash. The irony was not lost on me. When I finally found my voice, I asked why he was coming to me instead of Jake, his golden child. My dad went silent, then mumbled something about Jake being caught up with his new job and couldn't help right now. I couldn't help but laugh. After years of hearing how much better Jake was and how he deserved all the opportunities I didn't, here we were. So I was supposed to step up, but I flat out told my dad what I thought about it. I suggested he go talk to Jake instead, since Jake's always been the favorite. There was this awkward pause on the line, and then Dad started to talk about regretting some of the choices he made and wanting to fix things, but I cut him off. I told him it was way too late for that. I'd spent ages trying to get his love and approval, and now that he needed something from me, suddenly he was interested in playing the sorry dad card. I hung up not long after that. When I hung up, I felt all sorts of things. Sure, he was still my dad, and a part of me felt bad for turning him down. But honestly, a bigger part of me felt relief. For once, I stood up for myself against him and didn't buckle under the need for his approval that I had chased for so long. The next few days were tough, though. I kept thinking about our chat and wondering if I did the right thing. I remembered all the times I needed his support, and he was just not there. Not for the big stuff like college tuition, but also the little things, like school activities, girl advice, or just learning to drive. My first heartbreak hit me hard when I was 16. Sarah was her name, and I thought she was the one. We dated for 6 months, then she dumped me for a football player. I was crushed. I came home with red eyes from crying, and my dad was in his usual spot on the couch, glued to the TV. He barely looked up when I walked in. I was hoping he'd ask what was wrong, but he just grunted and told me I was in the way of the screen. I ended up crying myself to sleep that night. Then there was getting my driver's license. Most of my friends learned to drive from their dads, but not me. I actually had to beg our neighbor, Mr. Johnson, to teach me. When I finally passed my driving test, I was so excited to tell them. Dad was in the garage with Jake, working on a car. Jake gave me a congrats, but Dad just nodded and went back to explaining something about the engine to Jake. I don't think he ever let me drive his car. Another thing that bugged me was what kind of trouble Dad was in if he needed my money. He was always so proud, like way too proud, so it had to be something big for him to reach out like this. Despite everything, I still worried about him a bit. But then I remembered how many times I worried about my own future because I wasn't making enough money after quitting college. Did he care back then? Nope. I had to figure things out on my own, and I did. I built my life without his help, so why should I bail him out now? I thought back to when I moved out and started fresh. I moved to a new place where nobody knew me and took any job I could find. I lived in this tiny studio that was a stretch to afford. I cleaned during the day and bartended at night. I was always exhausted, but somehow, I made it through. Some nights after work, my feet would be sore, and I'd smell like smoke and beer. I doubted my choices, thinking maybe I should have put my pride aside and tried to work things out with Dad. But remembering how judged and never good enough I felt, I knew I'd made the right call. As the days passed, I felt better about my decision. Not giving in to Dad gave me control. I wasn't the same kid he could ignore or push around anymore. I'm an adult now, and I make my own choices. I don't owe him anything. I was curious, though, about what got him into this mess that Jake couldn't or wouldn't help with. Part of me wanted to know what was happening with Dad and Jake, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to dig up all those old feelings. I considered reaching out to Jake's mom, my aunt. She could be cold but was always nice to me. Maybe she'd have some insight. The last time I saw her was at a family gathering before I took off for work. She gave Jake a big hug, and I thought. So, there I was, watching her shower Jake with compliments about getting into this amazing college. When it was my turn, all I got was a half-hearted smile and a quick pat on the shoulder. As I walked away, I decided not to call her anymore. I'm still on the fence about what my next move should be, especially as I jot down this story. A part of me says to just move on and focus on my personal growth. But then, there's also a part of me that's curious about what's happening with my dad and Jake. I guess only time will tell if I dive deeper or let it go. Fast forward a month since my last update, and wow, a lot has gone down. Despite my initial reluctance, my curiosity won out. I started digging around to understand why my dad suddenly needed help and why Jake was missing in action. I reached out to some family friends who still keep in touch with my dad. Initially, they weren't too open, but eventually, I pieced together what's been happening. First, I called Mrs. Peterson, who used to be my mom's best friend and was always super nice to me. She was surprised to hear from me but happy to chat. After catching up a bit, I brought up my dad and Jake. She hesitated, let out a deep sigh, and then spilled it. Turns out my dad went all out for Jake, far beyond just paying for college. He helped with a house down payment, bought him a car, and even funded a business idea Jake had. To make all this happen, my dad maxed out his credit cards and took loans, drowning in debt to give Jake a bright future. Mrs. Peterson also shared a story from a few years back when my dad bragged about Jake's potential as a future business mogul. When she asked about me, my dad just shrugged and said he hoped I was doing okay. That indifference really shocked her. Next, I talked to Mr. Johnson, our old neighbor who taught me how to drive. He's pretty observant and filled me in on recent happenings. Apparently, Jake convinced my dad to invest in a startup he was launching with college buddies. It's some tech thing, though Mr. Johnson wasn't sure about the details. What he did know was my dad remortgaged the house for that investment. The kicker? Jake's new job wasn't going as well as planned. The business flopped, and now Jake's struggling financially. When my dad asked him for help with the debt, Jake claimed he couldn't spare anything. Mr. Johnson overheard them arguing when Jake showed up in a flashy new car. My dad confronted him about the failed business and the money. Jake yelled back, blaming market changes, promised to pay back, then sped off, leaving my dad looking crushed. I won't lie, a small part of me felt a weird sense of satisfaction. After all those years of constant comparisons and hearing how I didn't measure up, it turned out Jake wasn't the golden child after all. My dad had invested everything in him, and now those dreams were shattered. But mostly, I just felt exhausted from the endless drama, pain, and what-ifs. I thought about how things might have been if my dad invested in me like he did in Jake. Maybe I would have finished college or be in a different career. Then again, maybe I wouldn't have learned those crucial lessons about self-reliance and perseverance. I remembered the tough days after dropping out of college, juggling multiple jobs and barely getting by. Those long nights studying after exhausting work shifts were all fueled by a drive to better myself, even without formal education. It was tough, but it made me who I am today. Finally, after thinking it over, I texted my dad. I let him know I was aware of the situation with Jake and the financial mess. I didn't offer to help or brag about my own life. I just hoped he realized how his decisions affected both of us. A few hours later, he replied. So, my dad sent me this really long apology message. He admitted he hadn't been fair to me and blamed his outbursts on his grief over my mom's passing. He mentioned how proud my mom would be of me and even suggested we meet up for a chat. It took me a while to figure out how to respond. There's still that little kid inside me that wants his dad's love, so part of me wanted to say yes. I imagined we might sit down, talk it out, and magically fix everything. But I'm not a kid anymore, I've had to hustle for everything I have. I couldn't help but remember all the big moments my dad missed, Like my high school graduation. I was scanning the crowd, hoping to see his face, but nope, just disappointment. Even when I got my first apartment, furnished with hand-me-downs and a lot of grit, or when I got a promotion at the bookstore, he wasn't there to share those moments. In the end, I told him I wasn't ready to meet up. I appreciated his apology, but I made it clear that words can't just wipe out years of neglect. I need time and space, and he needs to respect that. Plus, there's no way I'm going to bail him out financially. We're both responsible for where we ended up. Writing this all down, I do feel relieved, not exactly happy, but like a weight's off my shoulders. For so long, I kept wondering why I wasn't enough for him, why he always favored Jake. But now I see that it wasn't about me, it was all about his own issues and inability to deal with his grief. I don't know what's going to happen with us in the future or if we'll ever have that heart-to-heart. Right now, I'm focusing on my own life and growth. I'm sticking to my night classes and working toward that degree. I'm also surrounding myself with people who value me for who I am. Just last week, I helped my friend Sarah, not the high school Sarah, move into her new place, and it hit me, these friendships, this chosen family, are what really matter. Life's not always easy, but I'm carving out my own path, and for the first time in a while, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Who knows what tomorrow will bring, but I'm ready to take it on, thanks to the strength I've built over the years. That's something my dad's favoritism can never take away from me. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more crazy real-life stories happening around you.